This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by the Telos Alliance and Axia Audio Consoles. On the web at axiaaudio.com.
And now, our feature presentation.
Twert. Do consumer electronics devices have any place in the professional broadcast world? You betcha. We're talking about it on Twert.
All right, calm down. He says that to everyone.
This calls for immediate discussion.
What's up, Doc?
All your days are belong to us.
From his palatial office of important business,
or in a choice hotel in a distant land,
this is Kirk Harnack.
Along with Tom Ray and our special guest, hey, it's Andrew Zarian joining us for This Week in Radio Tech.
You're dialed in to This Week in Radio Tech.
It's time for This Week in Radio Tech. Hi there, I'm Kirk Harnack. I'm so glad that you made the switch and can join us here on the GFQ network. Thanks for joining us. We got a really good show. We have a guest on the show today who's going to add a lot to our understanding of our subject. Now, our subject is using consumer electronics in broadcast facilities. Now, my co-host is for the show. Our co-host is Tom Ray. Let's say hi to Tom Ray. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good, Kirk. Yourself? Greetings and salivations, by the way.
I'm great. Hey, in two sentences, tell us about Tom Ray.
I'm the VP of Engineering for WOR Radio in New York. I am also a ham radio operator, and I'm a co-host here on Twert. So,
well, good. Glad you could be with us. We're often joined by Chris Tarr and also by Chris Tobin, both of whom are unavailable tonight, unexpectedly. So I wish both of them well, and they should both be back here next week. And hey, maybe Tom Ray will take the week off next week. But also joining us, we have a guest, a very special guest, who is remoting in all the way from Queens, and that would be Andrew Zarian. Hey, Andrew, how are you?
Hey, Kirk. Thanks for having me today.
Good to be had.
I'm nowhere else. I mean, I have to be producing a show, so I'm like, I'll turn on the camera. I'll join you guys.
Well, I figured you'd be a good person to talk to, especially in the non-licensed broadcast world, about using consumer electronics to get broadcasting done. And we know that you can run an entire broadcast facility with basically consumer electronics, stuff that you can buy at, as we say here in Nashville, at Guitar Center. So, hey, I should introduce myself a little bit more. I'm Kirk Harnack. My title, my full-time job is I'm the Vice President of Telos Products at the Telos Alliance. The Telos Alliance is nearly a 30-year-old company, almost, where they have Telos, Omnia, and Axia brands. Also, linear acoustic audio processors for television are part of the lineup there. Also, I'm part owner of a bunch of radio stations. I thought we sold all our stations in Mississippi, but somehow we got them back. So I'm a part owner of some stations in Mississippi and in American Samoa. So I still have my hand in broadcasting that way a bit. I am part owner. I own the part that doesn't make any money, which is why I work for Telos full-time. Very happy to do so. All right. So our subject matter is using consumer electronics in a broadcast facility. And so I'm not really sure where to start. Also, I've got a couple of museum-type items to share with you. But I thought we get started here with something that I used. I had a project where I needed some 5.1 surround sound, but I needed it cheaply. I didn't need to buy a really expensive multi-channel PCI sound card. So I went to a music store and I found this little thing from Turtle Beach. It is a Turtle Beach Audio Advantage, and the model name there is the Rode. And this dude hooks up to your computer's USB, and then it puts out somehow 5.1. I thought I remembered getting 5.1. Yeah, I did. Okay, so it's got this what looks like a PS2 connector right here, and the PS2 connector plugs in over here at this end of it. And then coming out, you get sorry, it's all kind of mangled up here. You get this is unbalanced, so it's not extraordinarily professional, but you get unbalanced 3 stereos, which gives you left and right in the front. It gives you left and right surround channels for the rear, and it gives you the center channel and the low frequency channel, LFE as it's called, center and LFE out another one. So you get if you got a program, and it comes with the driver, the sound card driver, the US that it has, will let you take a program like Adobe Audition or Cool Edit and lets you assign tracks to individual channels, front left, front right, rear left, rear right, and center and LFE. So there you go. You could also have there's a WAV file format that's a multi-channel format. In fact, Telos and Omnia and Axia have demonstrated this WAV file format. It's actually 5.1 plus 2 or 2 plus 5.1. It's stereo mixed down plus 5 channels plus the low frequency channel. So anyway, that actually worked. I used that for a demonstration to I think it was to an SBE and a seminar in New York a few years ago, and it worked well. So there's an example of consumer electronics. I always liked this Turtle Beach stuff, at least in the early years of Turtle Beach. I don't even know if they're still in business. Oh, it does have a SPDIF input and a SPDIF output on it as well. So okay, there's an example. Look at that. I didn't realize this. It's got little stereo microphones on this thing.
Kirk, how good does it sound?
Well, how good does it sound? I'm sure if I was a audiophile that used oxygen-free copper cables, I'm sure I'd find things wrong with it. But it's low distortion. Probably on the order of 0.01% THD. It's probably got a signal-to-noise ratio of on the order of 90 dB or so, if you measure it right. I'm sure they have a whole bunch of conditions for measuring it. And the frequency response, I'm sure, was ruler flat because it can be. It's easy to do with today's chips from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. So that's not a problem. So, yeah, I recall we ran this into an amp, a multi-channel amp, and played it through some big honking Genelec speakers for a room of broadcast engineers. And they went, whoa, sounds great.
Yeah, it's surprising what you get from these little USB devices, too. We use in the studio for one of our computers, for the computer that we use a lot of our sound effects for, we use something called the iMic, and it's a $20 USB sound card that goes into our Mac, and it sounds phenomenal. I mean, for $20, it sounds great for, $100 for a sound card, but it's amazing to see for $20 what you could get and how good it sounds.
Absolutely, yeah. And these USB mics, I forgot about that. Over in the server room, I've got a USB mic from Audio Technica that, I liked it pretty well, but I don't like it as well as this Heil mic setup with, I don't know why I didn't even show this. Here's a perfect example. Shoot, I can't hear. I can do this, though. I can take the camera and move it around this way and point it there. And there is the Shure X2U. And I use that for every Twert show. I use that to record voiceovers that I do for my radio stations. And it's USB there on the input side, on one side, and it's an XLR connector on the other. It's got selectable phantom power. I think the phantom's just 12 volts, but with many, many microphones, that works fine. And then it's got a headphone output on the side, and it lets you mix the mic preamped audio with the return audio from the computer. So if you were looping the audio through the computer to hear yourself, there's a slight delay in that, and it's uncomfortable for folks. So this just lets you, I'm hearing myself with absolutely no delay because it's mixed in from the mic preamp, which is analog. And then, of course, I'm hearing you guys through the USB computer sound card, if you will. So that Shure X2U is, I guess that's roughly $170 device. Sorry for the camera. It's a $170 device. And it doesn't have the specs. You wouldn't plug a Neumann mic into that and expect to get the most out of the Neumann mic, but it does seem well matched to a typical dynamic mic like this Heil. It doesn't do processing. It just does mic pre and into the USB. By the way, I've tried some other USB, XLR to USB adapters, and some others that I tried were really crap. They were just awful. You could hear pops and clicks, and it was easy to distort them. One came in the form of a cable. I bought a $40 cable that had the chipset, the audio chipset, built into the USB end of the cable. So it's USB on one end and XLR on the other. And I think it just provided phantom power all the time.
Now, have you tried the Heil USB-Q?
No, what is that?
It's the same thing. It's an adapter. It's a USB to XLR adapter.
Okay. No, I haven't tried that one. I'm pretty sure that wasn't available when I bought the Shure X2U.
Yeah, I think it came out a couple months ago, and I've heard some good stuff. I know people have tested it on the Mac. I'm not too sure about Windows yet, but they say it's great on the Mac.
Well, generally, Bob Heil makes great stuff, and he's able to figure out how to make it at a reasonable price. So I will give that a try. Thanks for the tip. Tom Ray, you've been notably silent. I guess, Tom, in your position, you've used only professional broadcast equipment and never put your hand on anything with a plastic case.
Yeah, right. One of the, I was sitting here thinking before what we could talk about. Well, one of the things that you sometimes need, at least in a broadcast studio, is television audio. For whatever reason, I mean, if there's breaking news and you need to pick it up, or maybe you're talking about American Idol or something on the morning show and you want a clip from it, you can pull it off of television audio, and there are numerous ways to do that. There are a couple of ways where you could go out and probably buy an expensive television demodulator, but most of us in our studios either have a cable box with audio outputs, a DirecTV box with audio outputs, or just the TV with a headphone jack on the side, and that works just as well most of the time. And for what you're using it for, it sounds pretty good.
Tom, it's been said, and Mike Phillips in the chat room reminded me, and it's absolutely true. So many stations would not be on the air today if it weren't for Radio Shack.
Oh, gosh. Oh, I can't tell you how many times I've been to Radio Shack. I mean, worst case, it's Saturday night, you've got some problem, and it's a stupid little 50-cent capacitor, and you can probably go down to Radio Shack and come up with something that'll work. Soldering irons, I mean, cables. In the newsroom, we use these little consumer digital recorders.
Oh,
and they can plug a regular old tip ring sleeve connector into it like this, a little 1/8-inch thing.
Oh, yeah.
You can drive yourself nuts soldering one of these on, but you can go to Radio Shack and buy a nice cable with probably 6 feet long with one on each end, cut it in half, solder on an XLR connector, and bang, you've got a microphone plugged into it. The guy's got this little tiny thing in his hand that holds, depending on the type of audio compression you use, 15 hours of audio. And he can sit there for several hours with the AA batteries and go for it. But yeah, no, Radio Shack's great. They've kept a lot of places on the air over the years.
I always look for the best advice there. I usually walk in. I'm making an absolute beeline for where they used to hang the transistors or the capacitors, or where maybe they have the XLR connectors in a drawer now. And of course, I'm stopped. By the 19-year-old kid who. I'm so sorry I do this. This is so bad. The kid stops you and he says, "Hi there. Welcome to Radio Shack, America's technology store. May I help you?" And dude, have some common sense. I don't say this. I'm thinking to myself, I'm making a beeline. My eyes are focused on where I'm going. Look at my face and determine that I don't need help. I'm already going somewhere and I know where I'm going. And so after he says, "May I help you?" I usually take 2 steps back, kind of look him up and down, and I say, "I don't think so." And I just keep on walking.
Radio Shack, people in Radio Shack usually cringe when I walk in, especially the one here in town. I was looking for something one day. I forget what I was looking for, but I was looking for something. I was building an interface for something for one of my ham radio rigs. And I'm standing there looking at the wall, and this guy comes in. He's looking, and of course the kid comes over. Hey, can I help you? And the guy said, "Well, yeah, I'm looking for this this like solder rope or something." And immediately I knew what he was talking about. He was looking for, the brand name is called solder wick, but that's not what Radio Shack calls it. I think they call it solder braid. And what it's used for those watching who don't know, is when you're working on like a printed circuit board, you need to unsolder a component. You take the tip and you touch it to this braid and put it down on the board, and it just literally sucks the solder right up like a sponge. And the kid sat there and looked at the guy and looked real puzzled and went, Never heard of anything like that. We don't carry that. And I just very nicely reached over like this and went and handed it to the guy, and the kid's jaw just about hit the floor because they carry it. It was right in front of the guy's face. The kid didn't know what it was.
Jeez.
It was like, come on, dude.
Yep. So, and speaking of, we can take a moment to have a teachable moment here. You know that solder wick. What does one brand of that had the white powder on it? It had a whitish powder on it.
Oh Lord, I remember that, and I can't remember which brand it was. There are several brands, and it also comes in various widths.
Well, the stuff with the white powder on it just worked great. It may have been some kind of a rosin.
I think you're right. That made the solder flow better over the braid. But yeah, no, and the stuff, even the stuff without the white powder works very well. You know, you have the there are numerous types of desoldering tools. One of the most popular is the little red rubber bulb with a little tip on it. Oh, I hate those things. I can't tell you how many of those little tips I've melted. But no, the solder works great, especially when you're working on a multi-level board.
So, okay, consumer electronics in a broadcast facility. Now, think of some of the categories. I mean, really, there's a lot of categories of things where we use consumer electronics. Microphones nowadays can be considered almost consumer electronics because you can go buy a blue microphone at the Apple store, right? You can buy sputtered gold condenser mics from, I don't know, MXL or somebody like that at Guitar Center for $100. So that's like consumer pricing on a microphone. Speakers. Okay, we often use consumer-ish speakers, bookshelf speakers and such in a broadcast facility, but oftentimes we use speakers that you wouldn't be likely to find in somebody's home anymore, like a Tannoy or a Genelec, right?
And sometimes along that same line, you use consumer-grade headphones constantly.
Oh, speaking of, I'll take this moment. So I told Andrew before the show, I'm going to rifle through my shelves and see what I can find for the show. I can't believe this. Do you recognize this, Tom? Andrew's not old enough to recognize this.
Oh, Lord, the Pro 4 headphones that weighed about 300 pounds, but you could not get them to feed back.
This is what retailers refer to as new old stock.
Neat.
Where did you find those? And if they've been worn, it was just to try them on. We're going to open this, right? Oh, look at this. Look at that.
Wow.
Oh, sorry. Let's see if I can get the glare out of there. There we go. Look at that. Wow. And there's some awesome headphones. And there's
great.
Former disc jockeys. MC Phillips says, Migraine City. They were it.
Why they were that tight?
Well, they're heavy. These will build your neck muscles incredibly. So let's do a little unpacking here, and I'll show you. This is what. Look at that. I'll be like Mini Pearl. I'll have the little tag right here still on. See. All right. They still have a bread tie around the.
It's brand new.
Yeah, brand new. There you go. How about that?
That's cool. That's very cool.
This presses my earbud into my ear so hard I can't hear it anymore.
Oh, I bet. Jeez.
These are so heavy. Oh gosh, what a great memory. And they have, I don't know if these are liquid or air. These feel like air. Now some of these had a liquid in them. These not muffs, ear muffs, ear seals.
Yeah. And you know that those are probably a later model rather than the earliers. I think the earliers are the ones that had the liquid in them.
Yeah, and the ones with liquid, oftentimes you'd get a little pinhole and they would leak down your neck. And that was a weird feeling to be on the air and all of a sudden you feel this blip, 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 blip down your neck. It was really weird. Okay, but wait, that's not all.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
I'm really enjoying show and tell.
Now, how much would you pay? I'm trying to get this back in the box. Hang on a second. I'll do that after the show. All right.
But wait, that was Pro 4. For that amount of money, we have more.
That was the Pro 4 AA, and those are my favorites. And for headphones, they really, I kind of like my actually, I've lost all my Bose Quiet Comfort. I keep leaving them on airplanes. You should just follow me in my seat and probably get you a free one. I have some Audio Technica noise canceling headphones. I never cared for these as much, but these are also new old stock. This is the Pro 4 AAA as opposed to the AA. Pro 4 AAA, and these were these had a leatherette headband. And let's see if I can get these gingerly out. Yeah, there we go.
But you know, they only work right when you when you're having car trouble and the tow truck shows up.
What's that? What only works right?
The AAA headphones.
There you go. Look. Oh man, that's amazing. Yeah, I never use these on there. I always use the heavier ones.
I was gonna say, are they, no, those aren't just as heavy. Nope.
They're not quite. But I didn't like the way that these. See, the other ones had an oval shaped ear surround, and these have this round ear surround. And nobody's ear is round, or very few people's ear is round.
The other one, the double A's fit really nice. They had that really nice oval shape to it, and covered up your ear. And
yeah, I'm an old white guy. I got long ears.
What year are those headphones from?
That's a great question. I'm going to guess those would have been from the mid 80s manufacture date. So it'd be worth it to at least, let me check the box. See if there's any indication on the box.
And just for fun, I'm looking them up on the internet to see if I can come up with an entry someplace with a date.
Made by Koss.
Let's see here. Yeah, I don't see anything that stands out that might have a date on it here. Oh, wait. Koss Pro 4 AA headphones.
Well, the box is copyright Koss 1977.
Yeah, Mike Phillips in the chat says he bought his in the 70s.
Well, I knew I was talking about these particular ones when they came from. So I bought them in the early 90s from a store that said, we can't sell that. They were selling CB parts, and they said, we just can't sell these.
Well, let's see. On Koss's website, they have the Koss Pro 4 AA full-size headphones. Apparently, they're still made. They're $99.
The Pro 4 AAA.
No, this is a AA. It's a
Real.
AA.
I wonder if they're the same.
They look the same. There's probably some differences in the materials used, but they look the same. It doesn't give. I don't see any specs here. I'd like to find out how much these things weigh. Here we go. They were introduced in 1970 as the first dynamic headphones to deliver true full frequency and high fidelity performance. Retired in the 1980s, in the late 1980s.
Yeah.
So I guess they make these like a retro model.
No, they brought it back. There was such a response, according to this. They brought them back to meet the response.
The Dr. Johnny Fevers of the world insisted that they be able to buy a new one. All right, I've been hogging the show here, talking about headphones. So those are a couple of my favorites. That's why I still have them. Okay, so we were talking about consumer electronics. We talked about microphones, headphones, amplifiers.
CD players. CD players.
Oh yeah, sure. Now, there was that period of time when a lot of stations, even mid-market, even small market stations, used the Denon CD cart players.
Yes. Yep.
They were so popular. I mean, I was a contract engineer for a bunch of small stations around West Tennessee, East Arkansas, North Mississippi. Not exactly economically thriving areas. And yet I was an authorized Denon repair center for I limited it to the broadcast stuff. A few people sent me their car stereos. So I had to send them back. But I had all the jigs and stuff from Denon to align and repair those players. But you said consumer electronics, and those players were expensive. I would tell a station, Tom, maybe do the same thing. They'd want to buy, there's this CD player for $79. We can buy that. Why would I pay $1,100 for that Denon? So because the $100 one, you're going to use that for 9 months. We're going to throw it out. It's going to skip on the air. It's going to make you sound bad, and it can't be remote controlled. Or I can charge you $200 in labor to interface it to a remote control, optoelectronics or a relay or something, or you can buy this Denon, and it's going to run for 3, 4, 5 years before you have to do anything to it. And it comes with the ability to be remote controlled, and it's got balanced outputs. Oh, by the way, that cheap CD player, we're going to need to buy a balancing amp for that, and that's going to be $159.
Right, and plus the Denon, if for whatever reason you needed to really cue past something, if there was the PD wanted you to cue past something on the intro to a song, it's going to be a lot more accurate on the Denon than it is on that consumer machine. It'll also give you a countdown timer on the Denon, where the consumer machines usually don't. They usually just give you a cumulative running time.
Yeah, or if they did, you had to push a button a few times to get some other time on the display.
And the Denon would flash a light. You could set it, say, 20 seconds before the end, flash a light, and you had a flashing light saying, "Dude, you better do something because your song's going to end."
Dude, get back in the room. Imagine if we could send you an SMS, 1 minute before the end of the show. That'd be great. And here's another teachable moment. Mike Phillips points out that the consumer electronics stuff, being a high impedance output at a minus 10 dBV level, not so good at driving a 600 ohm +4, looking for a +4 dBm input on a console. So now today's modern consoles are typically high impedance inputs. But, back in the 80s and even in a lot of the 90s, we were dealing with consoles from Autogram. Remember those battleships?
Ah, yes, the old Harris consoles.
Were typically transformer input. Actually, most of them we had were transformer input, 600 ohms, and you needed to drive them with a real, by golly, +4 from a 600 ohm or less source.
And while the consumer electronics, were good and some stations opted for them, you did have to be careful if you happen to be located in a building with a transmitter. Sometimes when you hook up those consumer electronics, you heard yourself come back, which was not good because it took the form of feedback. Or if you had an AM transmitter on site and you put these in the FM studio, you all of a sudden got the AM program under the music.
In fact, I spoke a minute ago about you might need a balancing amp, and of course some people are scratching their head saying, balancing amp? What's that? Okay, well, guys like Hank Landsberg at Henry Engineering has made balancing amps for years. There have been some really inexpensive ones made that were not so good. Here's an example of an inexpensive one that actually, is okay. It's got a decent signal-to-noise ratio, certainly passes just fine. This is from Rolls, which means it's cheap. And inexpensive too. And so it's got your RCA inputs and outputs. And on the back side, it's got your XLR inputs and outputs. And it does take power. You got to have power to do this. You can do this passively just to change the impedance, but you don't get any more. Your minus 10 dB going in here needs to be +4 coming out here. So that's actually, it's a bit more than a 14 dB gain because one's dBV and one's dBm if it's 600 ohms or less. So anyway, this is called the Rolls Pro Match. I don't know which of my stations I stole this one out of. It must have been in use because it's got some Velcro on it. So obviously we had it slapped up somewhere inside a cabinet. But this is a common device to use when you got to interface a piece of consumer gear with a broadcast console.
Kirk, you brought up a good point before about the consumer CD player. You use it for 9 months, you throw it out, and that's the problem with the consumer gear. It's not intended to be used in a 24/7, 365 environment like professional gear is. That's why professional gear costs so much more, because it's built like a battleship.
Yeah. But and at least it a lot of it is, or used to be, or I guess some of it still is. Okay, so another piece of consumer gear that has gained a lot of popularity is in the business of news gathering. And I'm talking about field microphones that record. It used to be. Remember the days when we had a Marantz cassette player that would sling over your shoulder and had a bunch of D batteries in it?
Actually, I remember the days of and I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember the model number, but I remember the Sonys, which were before the Marantz.
I don't remember those.
They were about that long, and the cassette was down here, and there was a speaker up here, and we used to keep a good stock of miniature phone jacks because they'd constantly break off with the guys plugging things in from the newsroom constantly.
Oh, geez. Hey, actually, I gotta pause for a minute. We're gonna come back with more talk about using consumer electronics in the broadcast facility. So we're gonna talk about field recording, and then it wouldn't be a complete show because broadcast facilities use so much computer gear. Well, heck, I wouldn't say almost all of it is, but almost all of it that we use in radio stations is consumer gear or built on consumer gear. Even if we put it in a nice metal case. Oftentimes, radio stations don't use, server class motherboards and other server class things like power supplies. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. Right now, I want to bring you a word from our sponsor, also my employer. Thank you very much, the folks at the Telos Alliance. And just in the last few days, I can't give you all the details. It's a little under wraps right now. But the last few days, I got to install 6 Axia consoles in New York. And we did it real fast, had a lot of help because we had to it's just, well, when I get to tell you the story, eventually it's going to be really cool. But installed 6 Axia consoles, one big one, actually the one that normally sits in my office across the room here. It got loaned out, and then 5 others. And since we were just talking about consumer levels and professional levels, one of the interesting things about modern day consoles, including Axia consoles, is that you can go from, say, an iPod headphone output unbalanced, as long as the cable's not too long, and go into the balanced input of an Axia node, for example, to turn analog audio into live wire streaming audio, or directly into the back of one of our smaller consoles at Axia, say the IQ console or the Radius console, because you can set the input gain on any of these inputs of an Axia console. You can give it 12 dB of gain on most of our nodes, and on our smaller consoles, you can give it up to 24 dB of gain. Point is, you've got plenty of gain there, and as long as you're not breaking any of the rules about running unbalanced audio too far, where you start having a hum problem, hum pickup, or RF pickup, then you're going to be fine, and it sounded great. So we ended up using an iPod and plugging that in the back of an Axia node, popping the gain up by 12 dB. It came out perfectly on the audio console, and thanks to the LiveWire network, we just ran that audio to all the studios. We were playing audio in all the studios, had all the meters moving, and it proved out the whole system in a very short period of time, thanks to that kind of connectivity. Later on, we ended up hooking a rack-mounted professional CD player to that same input, and all we had to do was bump the gain down by 12 dB back to a normal kind of +4 level that it was expecting, and we had the same audio going to all the studios. So I just want to point out that with today's modern equipment, and I include Axia with that, you get some pretty cool features that just make your life a lot easier. It means that you need, or less often, I won't say it always does away with the need for these things. If you're in a high RF environment, then you better use short unbalanced cables and use a box, like this one or the one from Henry Engineering. And there's others on the market too, some balancing boxes. But if you're not in a high RF environment, oftentimes you can get away with just running an unbalanced cable into an Axia input and give it a little bit of gain boost, and bam, you're off the races with just beautiful audio, 24-bit, 48 kilohertz sampled audio. So it's higher than CD quality in terms of how we carry it through the system. 22-bit math in all the DSPs, floating point. Bottom line is you just get gorgeous audio in and out of Axia systems. So I'd like you to check it out. Go to the website and check out axiaaudio.com and read about the various audio consoles on there. I got to tell you, none of them are as cheap as, say, a little console that you'd buy down at Guitar Center or you'd mail order on eBay. But nowadays you can buy a LiveWire console for under $6,000, and one of our dealers here in the U.S. is also offering a free telephone hybrid along with that console. So check it out. In fact, the dealer, I believe, is Broadcasters General Store. So check it out on the web, axiaaudio.com. I thank them very much for sponsoring the show. All right. And I will have pictures and details at a future date on the really cool project I got to be involved with early this week. All right. You are watching This Week in Radio Tech with me, Kirk Harnack. Hi. And Tom Ray is also along with us. Also, as a guest, Andrew Zarian is with us. He is head of the GFQ network, and he is the expert at plugging plastic boxes together and making wonderful TV and audio.
That's what I do.
Right. Andrew, when I was at your place, I couldn't help but notice an enormous amount of IT gear, and a lot of it was in plastic. In fact, all of it, I guess, was in plastic.
All of it, yeah.
So I'll bring up one that we all know and love, the famous Linksys router. In fact, this I'm pretty sure I applied Tomato or DDWRT or something to its firmware, because this is the one you can do that with, right?
WRT 54G, right?
This one is, sure enough.
Yeah, we use all everything is plastic, and I'll show you guys on camera. These are our routers that we use. I have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 of these from Verizon, and the reason why I have 9 of them is because they are not reliable at all, and they have issues with the NAT pool, and they really don't. They're not meant for what we do, and that's stream live audio and video 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at around 5 megabits a second all the time. So at times these routers actually burn out. So they're very nice at Verizon, and they let us keep the routers when they come in to upgrade our routers. So we have a bunch of old Fios routers as backups, and I'll tell you, Kirk, it's come in handy multiple times where we're on the air and all of a sudden the feed goes dead, the router's dead, and we've just been able to plug it in, and luckily it works.
This is so interesting. One thing about consumer electronic gear, at broadcast engineers, sometimes we poo-poo this kind of gear, and yet it's often cheap. And if we work with it a little bit, it can really fill the bill. Tom, help me out here. What other areas do we often use consumer gear? What do we try to mount in a rack or paste on the wall or stick under a? We used to use consumer phono preamps sometimes.
Oh yeah, we used consumer phono preamps. Let's see, what else did we have? Along the line of CD players, there were mini disc players. Let me think. We already mentioned the cassette decks.
Yeah.
They now have the new little handheld digital things that we're using in the newsroom that work. They're phenomenal. They're incredible. Let's see.
Mike Phillips, I'm glad he mentioned this. What do we buy at hardware stores to keep the transmitter site running? And is there much consumer electronic gear at the transmitter site? And I think generally the answer there is no. You take a plastic radio to most AM or FM sites, and they just they pick up your station all up and down the dial.
Not only that, but you probably burn out the RF preamp on the thing in a real hurry.
Yeah.
But at the hardware store, you can buy hose clamps, and it depends. I mean, from there or an auto parts store, you can buy a set of hoses for the generator. You can. There's always screws and tie wraps and duct tape and chewing gum and paper clips, to keep the place going. You're
not mentioning anything in the consumer electronics range, and that does speak to what we do at transmitter sites.
Yeah, well, in the consumer electronics range, a trouble light.
Okay. All right.
An electric drill.
Okay. Sure. Tools.
Right. But let's see. At the WR transmitter side, I've got a Linksys router for the internet stuff.
Does it work well in the IRF environment?
Yeah, it works very well. I've also got a wireless access point that works very well. Let's see. Do I have any other consumer electronics stuff there? Well, I've got several computers, but aside from that, no. Everything else is professional level.
You get any RF strangeness with computers at a transmitter site?
Yeah, it depends. You know, it's funny. A lot depends on the site. Very interesting at our site. Obviously, we have 50,000 watts of WR on site, and I don't have, for example, the telephone lines. I don't have any RF from WR. I do have RF from 1010 Winds, which is a mile and a half away. Let's go figure. Oh yeah. No. We use. I'm using consumer grade wireless telephones and such at the site, and they're fine. Let's see. Oh yeah, and I've got a consumer grade printer and fax machine at the site, and those surprisingly work very well.
Oh, that does surprise me.
And the fax machine, I do have a couple of RF toroid beads on the phone line right before it goes into the fax machine. But besides that, it just sits there and runs.
All right, for the non-engineers watching or listening, what does that mean that you have some toroid beads? It sounds like, some ritual on the phone line as it enters the fax machine.
Well, actually, I'm going to get up here and wander over across the room for a minute, and I should be able to. Hang on a minute here. I think I've got one or two over here on the.
Going to get some of his ceremonial RF beads.
Yeah, if I can find one over near the. Oh, here we go. Over near the ham stuff, because it comes in very handy around the house here. So I've got this little guy. We call it a bead. It's actually. Let me open the thing up here.
By the way, why do you have a fax machine at the transmitter site?
Because when we're out there, we may need a fax, or we may need to get email from somebody. I was working on the transmitter the other day, emailing back and forth to Harris, and I've also had a couple of occasions where I needed to order something, and they wouldn't take the document via email. I had to fax it in, so that's why we have a fax machine there.
My goodness!
But this is a toroid, and inside you've got the ferrous material, the magnetic material, and you take a cable, you put it through the middle, and you clamp it. Or in this case, what I would do is I would wrap it through one more time. And what this does at a higher frequency, at RF frequencies, works at AM, works really well at FM frequencies. What this does by wrapping it around the cable is it becomes a big inductor or a big low-pass filter, and it keeps the RF on one side and doesn't allow it to get to the other side. And basically what you're doing is you're breaking the cable. And if there's, especially at FM, I mean, a cable like this on this pair of headphones, this headset mic could be resonant at the FM frequency. So it could make a really great antenna, because an FM wave is only about 7 or 8 feet long. So you put this on it breaks it up, and it forms a high impedance path, so the RF can't get through, and you get rid of the RF interference that way.
Gotcha. So it keeps the RF from coming into the machine and getting on all the circuits inside the machine.
Now, Tom, a lot of USB devices have that, right? On the cables.
Yes. Yep. They'll put them on the cables because the USB device generates RF. All it is, it's a computer which has a microprocessor which has a clock that runs at RF frequencies. So it will become a miniature radio transmitter, and the RF bead, or the toroid transformer the toroid is what we call these. Will get rid of the RF or greatly reduce it so it becomes a non-issue. Which also, if you go to some transmitter sites, particularly AM transmitter sites, and look at the towers and look at the guy wires, you'll see the guy wire come down to a certain point. You'll see an insulator, and you'll see the guy wire continue, and maybe farther down there's another insulator. And the reason for that is because it is to keep the guy wires from becoming resonant and radiating the AM frequency.
But that's a different purpose than the toroid.
Right. But it's kind of the same idea, because what you're doing is you're breaking up that line, and you're not allowing it to become resonant, and that's basically what you're doing with this. You're breaking up the line. You're
also
putting a very high impedance in there. Yes. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly what you're doing.
Example. I just yanked. I've got a little Windows laptop over here to my side, and here is an example of a power cord that has a toroid on it. I'm sure you've seen keyboard cables, mouse cables, power cables like this one, all sorts of cables that may attach to your computer that have a lump in them, and that lump is a toroid. And especially if these items come with the computer. And here's why. A good lesson for you here. Before you can sell a computer as a system, that would include the power supply, it's got to meet RF egress and ingress specs. It can't put out junk RF-wise into the air to mess up radio reception, and nor can it accept junk that would mess up the computer. And they do this by measuring what's coming out of the computer mostly. That's what they're really interested in. We actually, on a previous Torch show, we showed this process of testing a piece of gear. It happened to be an Axia console. It was an Axia. It was one of our new little desk consoles, a little 6-fader console, and it was just a preliminary test, and they did a sweep across the entire RF spectrum with a calibrated antenna in one of these anechoic chamber rooms, not just anechoic from an audible point of view, but also is totally RF proof. Your cell phone will not work in this room whatsoever. You get 0 bars. And so you measure the console from a few feet away with this calibrated antenna, and you sweep the entire spectrum, and you see, it's putting out a little bit of, because the console, any piece of digital equipment, has clocks in it, and these clocks, make little small amounts of RF as it travels around on the circuit traces inside the equipment. So oftentimes a solution to this is any cable that attaches to a piece of gear is a potential to wick or carry or act as an antenna any clocking signals, any RF noise in the gear, to bring that out of the gear and thereby ruin the test and make the equipment non-compliant. So I was noticing in New York this week, I was attaching cables. These are CAN bus cables, was attaching to the Axia consoles, and they all have an RF toroid that is cable tied in place near the connector. And that's the exact purpose of that. In order to meet specs, it needs that toroid to keep RF from just wicking out and coming out, and the cable acting as an antenna. So if you're selling a computer and a power supply together like you would with a laptop, then it's got to meet that spec, and so it's got to be together. If you buy just a mouse all by itself, well, it probably doesn't have any spec to meet, and so you can just plug it into a computer. Now, at that point, the computer and that third-party mouse together may be non-compliant, but that's not the manufacturer's fault if made by two different manufacturers. Am I right on that, Tom? Did I guess that right?
I think you guessed it right.
Okay.
Has to be a first time for everything,
That's right. Hey, so Andrew, at your place, you're using some consumer gear for your video and your audio. Let's talk about your video.
Sure.
We're consumer gear right now. I've got this Logitech C910 camera in front of me. That was a $79 camera or so. You've got that one, plus you've got some other Microsoft cameras there. That's all consumer stuff.
Yeah, and we also my main shot right now that I'm on. This is a Canon HF 200 consumer camera. I think it was $700, brand new. I think you can pick it up now for about $300-400. So it's a mixed environment of actual camcorders and webcams. I'll switch here. So you can see a room shot, but the camera right now that you guys see is a Logitech C910. I'm sorry, it's the Microsoft LifeCam Cinema that I got about 3 years ago, and we also use a C910 for another shot. So we have 3 USB cameras and one handheld camcorder.
That camcorder, how do you convert that to USB, or do you have to get it into your computer?
No, the way we do it is we take HDMI out of it into a Blackmagic Intensity Pro capture card. So we have 3 Blackmagic Intensity Pros in the streaming machine. So we're able to bring in 3 external HDMI sources. It could be cameras, it could be Skype machines. You're actually coming across one for your Skype video.
Gotcha. Okay.
But video's fascinating because there's a fine line now between entry-level pro and, there's this weird category called prosumer. So it's a combination of consumer quality, but with pro sensors inside. And that seems to be a huge market for companies like Canon and Sony, where it's not, $3,000, but it's about $1,000 for a camera, and you're getting nearly the same guts as the $3,000 camera.
Just reminded me that at a lot of radio stations, they're putting cameras in the studio to have a video feed of the morning show, the morning zoo, or whatever it may be. And of course, they're using little cameras like the C910s or the little what was the Microsoft camera that you've got a couple of in there?
Yeah, the Microsoft LifeCam Cinema. It was one of the first high quality HD webcams that came out on the market about 3 years ago, and it's a phenomenal camera. I mean, I have no complaints. You could obviously see the difference from the $700 camera and the $50 camera, but I'll tell you, that price boost really doesn't. It might not be worth it for you. I mean, you're looking at a $700 camera right now, and then when I switch the camera, this is a $50 webcam.
Yeah. And I've seen some of your guests on closer shots with the webcam, and they look fine.
They look fine, yeah.
But it's pretty close.
It's funny, with internet broadcasting, you could really cut corners with consumer grade quality. Our audio, obviously we're going to be upgrading it, but right now we're using a Mackie 1402 VLZ3 mixer. We've been using it for about 2 years.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the audio next. Tell me about the Mackie mixer. Actually, a lot of broadcasters know about this because they use the Mackie mixer out on remotes, or if they've got to whip up a quick studio to mix a band or something, they'll use that famous Maxi. So you said yours is what which one? 140 what?
1402 VLZ3.
Gotcha. Okay.
We got about a couple years ago, and it's a phenomenal mixer. I mean, you have limitations when you're going into mix minus and you're trying to make subgroups. So, I mean, those are obviously your limitations with a $400 mixer like this. But for many people, it's good enough, and they never need to upgrade. If it's, one or two people doing a broadcast from their house, you never need to upgrade this thing.
Now, I would caution, and there's again Mike Phillips, my conscience, the little angel on my shoulder, reminding me of things. Those consoles that cost $100, $200, $800, or the Mackie that you said, $400 or $500. None of those have mic muting. None of them have a button that you push that would turn on a tally light, mute the speakers, do the things that broadcasters need to do every time they open the microphone. I've worked for some broadcasters who said, well, but yeah, that console, though, it cost, 7% of what the console you want to buy costs. Can't we save that money? I said, yeah, we can. And I need to build a box on the side that has a button that the disc jockey has to push every time that will mute the speakers and turn on the light, because you want that to happen, right? Oh, yeah, I guess we got to have that. You mean it doesn't do that? No, it doesn't do that. It's not meant for that. And then these little faders that are really short faders, those will wear out because we're going to use them. Every time he opens the mic, he's going to push it up. Every time he closes the mic, he's going to turn it back down. Oh, and there is no open and close the mic. It's just faders up and down is all it is. And so they're going to have faders up and down, up and down, up and down. And those little faders are going to wear out. And when they wear out, they're, depending on the design, they may not be replaceable or not worth replacing. And we have to go off the air to do that, by the way. And so do you still want to do that?
You brought up something interesting, Kirk. You brought up the lifespan a lot of these consumer devices, and I've seen these mixers, go within 2-3 years for a lot of people. I mean, within a year, some of these cheaper mixers have gone out because they're not meant to be turned on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Right now, we've probably turned off our board 12 times since getting it, and so far so good. I mean, no issues yet, but it could happen at any time, really, because it's a consumer-grade device.
I would note, though, that the way you use your console, you're not running the faders up and down, 27 times an hour. You're adjusting the faders a few times a day.
It depends how bad someone is on the mic.
there is okay, but you're not using it like a full-time music station would use it.
No, it stays the way it is. It's rare for me to start fiddling around with the mixer.
The danger to you is if, and I believe in that board, the audio actually does go through the fader. It's not running a VCA somewhere. So the fader eventually will get scratchy or it'll go out. I had a friend who bought actually that same console, and he is a voiceover guy on the East Coast, lives right next to the ocean. And his Mackie lasted him about 2 years, and then channels started dropping out. And I told him, look, I don't really want to open the box up. It's not my forte to open consumer gear and look around. Take it to the music store you bought it from. He did. Music store he bought it from sent it off to Mackie. Mackie sent it back and said, well, it's going to cost more to fix this than, and apparently it's just a lot of corrosion on, various little connectors and ribbon cables, whatever the case may be. I didn't look inside it, but there was just plenty of corrosion from him being near the salt water.
That's amazing. I'm actually starting to experience some issues with the EQs on the board, where if I start moving the EQ, you hear, crackling in the audio, and that's something new. We just started having that issue on a couple of the channels a couple of weeks ago. So I guess it's starting to approach that time with the board. But we also use, and I totally forgot to mention this, we also use DBX286 mic preamp processors on each channel. And we got that in May, and I actually think it's great. And I didn't get it for the mic processing. I got it for the gate on this thing, which comes in really handy when you're not in a perfect environment to be on a microphone.
Yeah, like you have an air conditioner or a screaming kid.
Or the pots and pans in the background, or someone's doing the dishes. Anything could happen. And we use condenser mics in the studio, so there's a lot of room noise. This really clears out a lot of it.
Yeah. Oh, so we need to have Mike Phillips on the show sometime. I understand he's been on one of your shows, right?
Mike is the resident expert in the chat room. I interviewed him for the IIB Spotlight a couple of weeks ago, and it's phenomenal. I mean, he really helps out a lot of people in the internet broadcasting community. He
notes that Warband designed the gating circuit in the DBX286. And I got to tell you, a gating circuit is something that I think you got to be pretty delicate about designing. I have certainly heard gates that behaved badly, and you could hear them come on and off. You want to have a gate, drop the back. What a gate is, folks, by the way, is if I were to, my mic is up full volume here, and I'm talking along, blah, blah, blah. If I shut up totally, then if there's a compressor in the line somewhere, it may suck up the background noise, like my MacBook Air's little fan is whirring away right here. So it's going to suck up background noise behind me. A gate is like a little man in the processor, and when he says, his levels drop down below a certain amount, I'm just going to go ahead and fade him all the way out. And so you would hear nothing. And if the gate is set what I would call aggressively, and the processing is set aggressively too, the compression and the gate have pretty similar thresholds, then you could have a window air conditioner blasting right next to you, and you can just close talk the mic like this, and every time you shut up, it just drops the level down. You'll never hear the air conditioner unless you talk real quietly, and the gate is trying to decide, gee, should I stay open or should I not stay open? And then you're going to hear the air conditioner. But I've been in radio stations where I thought, my God, really? You've got that window air conditioner in here? That's just horrible. And then I'd listen to it on the air and think, it's not bad. It's actually okay. And that's the only thing that the owner would buy is that window air conditioner.
I could turn mine off if you want me to kind of demonstrate how it works.
Turn what off?
The gate, yeah. I could bypass it. So I don't know if it'll come through, but there should be a lot of room noise from the CPU fans if I turn this off.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you could hear it.
Some hum and noise come up when you...
Oh, yeah, there it is.
You hear the fans right there, and it's cut off once I put the gate on.
Also listening pretty loudly. And honestly, Andrew, your environment there is not... I mean, you wouldn't want to do voiceover work for a major network in there, and you wouldn't want to do movie trailers, but it's not bad. It's quieter than a lot of radio station control rooms I've been in.
Yeah, it's been something I've been lucky with. I don't have a lot of reverb in the room, so I have a buddy and I helped him set up his little internet radio station, and there's so much room noise in that thing. I mean, everything is bouncing off, and it's about the same size as mine, but I guess I filled it up, or it's the angles of the room, or possibly the curtains across from me, where it's not really picking up emptiness in the room.
Do you really have a water-cooled computer there?
I do. I have a liquid-cooled CPU. That's what's running here.
Ah, okay. We're about out of time. We've been at this for a while, and I got to ask, Tom, one last comment from you. What is your favorite piece of consumer electronics gear to use in a broadcast facility? What do you say? You know what? I love this thing. I know it's not supposed to be real professional, but I love this thing.
Boy, That's a good question, which I really can't answer because I don't sit in the studios anymore.
Yeah.
So,
What?
oh man, I really don't know.
Is there a field recorder that costs $200 that they take out and just works well?
Actually, there's one that costs about $99 they take out and works well. It's made by Tascam. I don't know the model number off the top of my head. It's a little tiny little thing. It takes a little one of those little teeny tiny SD cards.
Mm-hmm.
You can plug a microphone into it, or it has its own mic, which actually doesn't sound too bad. It's got a little speaker. You can plug your headphones into it. With the MP3 compression on, you can record like 23 hours of audio on a 2 gig memory card, or you can record, I think, 2.5 hours of audio uncompressed. So it's got a built-in limiter. It's got built-in compression if you want to use that. It will allow you to adjust the levels manually. It's basically got everything for $99. And really, if something goes wrong with it, there's a thing called a trash can, and you go out and buy another one because it'll cost more to fix it than it will to buy a new one.
This is probably the Tascam DR05 handheld recorder. It's a list for $180, but typically you can buy it for about $100.
Might be the 04.
Okay, well, then the 05 may have replaced it. That's really cool, though, that you can plug an external mic into it. Because at that price point, I wouldn't have expected an external mic input. So that's a good deal that it has that.
Yeah, no, you're actually right. It is the 05. It's showing on Amazon right now for $99.
Yeah. Andrew, consumer electronic gear, maybe in your studio or something that you've used or something that you lust after. What's pretty cool for you?
I guess my entire studio is consumer electronics, right? I actually, one thing that we're going to be adding to the studio is we're going to be slowly eliminating the webcams from our setup, and we're going to be adding consumer cameras. And the Canon HG10, I think it's the HFG10 Canon camcorder. I believe they use those at the Twit Cottage also. The Twit Breakhouse. HFG10 Canon. It's about $1,000. It's a little under $1,000 now. And it's one of the best cameras that I've seen on the market currently, and it's amazing. Spencer Coburn uses it on his show, The Bald Truth, and it's an amazing camera. I'm actually very surprised for $1,000 how much this camera does.
Say, you mentioned earlier that black box converter converts HDMI to what?
No, it's called the Blackmagic Intensity Pro. It's a PCI Express capture card where you just take the HDMI and you just go right in, and the software that we use to broadcast sees it directly, and you just set the resolution, and it picks up high def HDMI video.
Okay.
And that's about $200.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not. I mean, for consumer gear, it's not cheap, but it's not exactly consumer gear either. It's kind of prosumer.
They have it's kind of consumer because the video gaming community loves this card to stream their video games online, and it gained popularity with that. Obviously, you're not getting what you're going to get with $1,000 card, but for what we do online, I think this is good enough, and you really don't see a lot of the flaws that you would see with something else, for $50. We've tried a couple other cards that were $100, and they're awful. So the jump for $100, you're getting a lot for it.
Now to stream their gaming online, you mean can they take the video feed that would go to their monitor and feed that into a video encoder?
Yeah, what they actually do is they take the HDMI from the Xbox or the PlayStation, and they just pop it into there, and they broadcast them playing the video game on, Ustream or Justin TV.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And my favorite piece of consumer gear for a radio station, I'm gonna be such a fuddy-duddy and say it's stuff like this. When you have to solve a level matching problem. Let's see. Bob Gaiman asked me to show that a little bit closer. Is one of these things. I can't do that backwards and with a 3-second delay. A little box like this just really helps out, and they're cheap. And of course I bought a bunch of them from Hank Landsberg. But when you can pay, I don't know how much I think that thing costs. There's MCM Electronics. You were talking about consumer. MCM Electronics. If you haven't heard of them, check them out. They have, cheap oscilloscopes, cheap speakers, all kinds of stuff. And they have a matchbox that's RCA to XLR, XLR to RCA. And so if you have to go cheap, they have one that, it's like $40 or $50. It's really cheap, but it actually, does the job. Wow, this has been interesting and fun to talk about, the dirty little secrets of the consumer gear that we use in professional radio stations. We're going to come back to you next week with another edition of This Week in Radio Tech. Thanks for making the switch over to the GFQ network with us. Please tell your friends, and thanks for the retweets of the show when I let you know. Hey, by the way, I was traveling across the country today, so I didn't get to do much tweeting about it. Just a quick one from the LaGuardia Airport. So thanks for the folks who retweeted it. Coming up on future shows. Hey, right now I'm calling him. We're going to have Mike Phillips on an upcoming show, and we're going to have my buddy Greg Oganowski back. He is a real expert at streaming audio and a big fan of the streaming format called HEAAC V2. And I never get tired of understanding how that format works, why it sounds really good. No, not perfect, but really good at 56 kilobits per second for a stereo audio stream. And then we're also going to find some RF experts to come talk to us as well. I'd like to have my friend Tom King from Kintronics on the show with us. Tom is an absolute expert at AM towers and AM directional arrays and building the systems that make all that kind of stuff work. So we've got some good shows coming up for you. So I hope you'll tell your friends and tune in to This Week in Radio Tech. The show's been brought to you by my friends at the Telos Alliance. You can easily go to the landing page, telosalliance.com, and check them out. Oh, and before the year is out, we are going to have some kind of contest and give away a nice piece of hardware or two. So some financial benefit in your loyalty. Thanks a lot.
Oh, cool. We'll see a hammer, a saw. What are we giving away?
I don't know.
You said a piece of hardware.
Piece of hardware, yes. A saw. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.
That's all the bandwidth we can pill for this week. Another twort has propagated, and all the transmitters and audio equipment live happily ever after, thanks to the handsome engineer and his kind, benevolent care. We'll be back next week.
Lord willing and the creek don't rise.
This Week in Radio Tech. Subscribe to iTunes and you'll never miss a show. Search for This Week in Radio Tech in the iTunes Store. Soliciting is strictly encouraged. If you like today's show, tell a friend. If you didn't like it, we were never here. Kirk Harnack's wardrobe provided by the Salvation Army and the Red Cross Disaster Relief Services. Hair and makeup provided by Penelope Garcia Hernandez Weinberg.
He's unique, wouldn't you say?
I just want to get it over with.
This ends this transmission. Tango, Whiskey, India, Romeo, Tango. Signing off. Okay.